for me at least, and I think for a lot of comics, in those first few years of doing stand-up, like nobody cares that you're doing stand-up and nor do they really ever care. No one's ever like, oh, thank God you got into it. But you are so desperate to get on stage that you take anything that comes across your desk, and it's still probably, it's like, well, yeah, you take a lot of things, but especially in those early years, you just have no barometer for what is bad, from the get-go. Do you have any, like, those first few years in where you look back and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I'm still doing them. I don't think I've ever said no to a show just because I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And I don't want to do a lot of them. But especially when you're starting out, you're listening to podcasts, you're getting into comedy, and you're hearing comedians tell stories about awful shows like we're doing right now.
Right.
And there's part of me back then, I've only been doing it 5 years. So 5 years ago, I'm thinking, I'm going to do this so that I can tell this story later.
Right.
And I've done a lot of stuff that's in the back of my mind the whole time. This is going to be awful. I can tell right away. And but years from now, I'll look back on this and laugh.
That's pretty great.
It's gotten me through a lot of shows.
That's a really good way to look at things going into them, because I did not have that foresight as a young comic. Like, I mean, many of times driving back to my house or my apartment, it was like, all right, so this is not the answer. I kind of thought comedy would be my thing, and it obviously isn't. And, but that's pretty cool that you thought of that at that time.
Some people will say, like, I heard this a lot going on. You can always get better.
Yeah.
You can always find ways to get better. And I don't think that's true. I think some shows are just such train wrecks that there's no practical benefit to it at all. You don't write any new jokes. You don't get better on stage. But I think the two benefits are this. One is that you might get a good story out of it. You'll like talking about it later. And two is it makes you appreciate the good shows.
Yes.
Because so many, I know a lot of comics who haven't done a lot of these terrible shows on the road, and they don't really know what a good show is. They don't really appreciate that they're doing a good show, or that, this is a crazy opportunity or whatever else. All that stuff gives you perspective.
And you almost want to pull them aside and be like, stop what you're doing. Stop being mean to this audience. Stop taking this so casually, because it is not always like this.
Stop berating the crowd. They're listening.
Yeah.
I'm sorry they're not laughing, but they're listening. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Oh, what? You guys don't like that kind of material? I guess it's a little too edgy for you guys?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man, it's 7:00. People are having dinner. They don't want to hear about this. They don't want to hear about incest as they're being served appetizers.
Right. Yeah. You got me thinking back of when the first couple years of me doing comedy. I was, you say yes to everything. You're doing all these terrible shows. You're not making any money. And I remember I was at work, and I asked my boss if I could leave 30 minutes early because I was driving to Birmingham to do a show. And he goes, that's about a 3.5 hour drive from Nashville. So if I leave at 4:30, like I can get there at 8 on the dot.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm already like cutting it close. And he goes, you're doing a show out there? I go, yeah. He goes, what are you getting paid? I go, well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'll get anything. And he goes, how much time are you doing? And I go, probably like 5 minutes. And he goes, you're driving 3.5 hours for 5 minutes? And I go, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make sense.
Right.
There's no, you can't sit down and rationalize that in any way.
No, because if it was anything else to drive 3.5 hours for that little.
Exactly.
Like, I wouldn't drive 3.5 hours for like most of my family. It's like, your sister's having a birthday party, but she's having it 3.5 hours from where you are. It's like, I'm going to have to miss it.
Drive 4 hours there. You'll be there for the happy birthday song, and then you drive right back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You get no cake.
Yeah, exactly.
No cake. And you just have to come in, quick pop in, and then you get to go home.
Yeah. And especially when you're starting out, you don't really have, and I still don't, you don't have like the perspective of everything seems like it's the end of the world.
Yes.
Right? It's every show is hugely important. Every show can make or break your career. It's going to affect your mood for weeks. And it's like, it's so important, right? So when the stakes seem that high,
right,
everything hits you a little harder. Like, just, I was thinking some of the stories of my worst bombs that, objectively, maybe they're not, I've had worse bombs, but because the stakes felt like they were higher, then it was worse. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, and you're so right about that, because you really do hang on every last show. Like, that's what's going to get me to the next one, you know?
Right.
And when you're first starting out too, you don't have shows every weekend.
Yeah.
So if you bomb, it could be a month before you get to try to fix that, you
Yeah.
know?
And you're still trying to prove to your scene and to your friends that you're funny.
Right.
So that's another part of it, is you don't want to be exposed as not a bad comic. So you're still trying to prove yourself. Now, if I go to an open mic now in Nashville and bomb, I don't care if somebody sees me and thinks he's not funny.
Right.
And people that know me and have seen me a bunch of times, they know that it's, they're not going to base their entire opinion of me off of that. But when you're just starting out and you're still getting your foot in, like, you're worried about that every set.
Do you can you recall anything from those early days of, like, just a specific bomb where you're like, that might be it for me?
Yes. One in particular I think about often. Have you heard of James Gregory, comedian
Yes.
James Gregory?
Yes.
He's an older guy. He's been doing stand-up like 40 years. He's
Yeah.
like a legend in the South. But I got to do, through a weird series of meeting people, I got asked to open for him at a theater in Gallatin, Tennessee. So it was like 30 minutes outside of Nashville. I'd never done a show that wasn't in a comedy club.
Yeah.
And I'm getting to open for this big comic that I'd heard of. So it's just, it's crazy.
Right.
Looking back, not that huge of a show, but at the time, this was it.
Right.
So I'm so nervous about it. I've got, I have maybe 10 minutes of material. I've been doing like 4 or 5 months. So I have maybe 10. Looking back, I probably only had 2 or 3, but I thought I had like a solid 10 minutes.
Right.
So I show up, I meet James. He's very nice. He's very friendly. He says, by the way, the first show is at 4 p.m. on a Saturday.
God.
4 p.m., sold out, average age, 81, 82 for the crowd, maybe. So he says, here's what you got to do. I want you to do 15 minutes. You can do 17 if you want. Just don't do under 15. Say thank you, good night, bring me up. Here's the most important thing. You need to grab the mic stand and take that off stage with you, because he uses a lapel mic.
Oh, okay.
So he says, you need to get the mic stand out of the way. So I said, all right. So I walk out. It's 300 or 400 people, all old people. I said, how's everybody doing? I got nothing. They're not doing good or bad. They're just sitting there. I bombed. I can still feel in the back of my neck that I bombed so bad. I did every joke I'd ever thought of. I looked down at my phone and I'd only done 7 minutes. So I'd already, I'd already like broken the cardinal sin of taking out your phone and looking at it. But I was I was shaking. I take out my phone and look at it. I'd done 7 minutes. I was like, I'm not even halfway done with this set, and I've done every joke. And I don't even remember what I did after that. Like I just started, rambling. It wasn't funny. I didn't get, and this was without exaggeration, I did not get a single laugh for 15 minutes. Not even, it was like, it wasn't, if you would have walked in, you would have been like, what is this? This is not a comedy show at all. Right. But I did my time. I'm proud of that. I did 15 minutes of nonsense. Then I said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Gallatin, the funniest man in America, James Gregory. And I walked off without grabbing the mic stand. God. So James walks out. Everyone, goes nuts. They're actually excited to see him. and then he has to turn around. So I have to walk back out on stage to grab the mic stand and leave. Now, would James Gregory remember this? No. Like, there's zero chance that he cared enough. But, you know, I walk off, and then it's just me in an empty room for an hour just sitting. Just sitting there, and I was like, you know, there's another show later tonight. He's probably going to fire me from this show.
Right.
He'll tell every comic, because every comic in America is on one big text thread.
Right.
And they'll text each other, "Hey, don't give this kid work."
Yeah.
Right? Just sitting back there, and I get a text from my now fiance who was in the crowd, and the text just says, "Wow." So I just sit back there for an hour, and that was like, dude. Because it felt like, oh, I'm getting an opportunity and I blew it.
Right.
That was like the worst feeling in the world. I think about that all the time.
It is so like just gut wrenching, because if you put, even if it's just 5 months, 6 months you've been doing it, you do it more than probably you've ever done anything. Right. You know, it's like any day job you've had, school, whatever it is, you put so much more into those 5 months than you have. So when you miss an opportunity, or what you think is an opportunity, you're like, I blew it. Like,
yes.
This is the moment. And
all for nothing.
Right. It's all for nothing. God. So after that, what does James say to you?
He does an hour. So by the time an hour later, he's not even thinking about it.
Right.
And when you've been doing it 40 years, I mean, I like to think that's not the worst bomb he's ever seen. So he just came back. The second show was so much better. Still not good, but like, you know, I said, "How's everybody doing?" And they responded.
Yeah.
So that was like, it ended on a good note. But sorry, my girlfriend was locked out of the house. She's in. Okay, good. But yeah, he was very nice about it, and I was worried about that. Have you opened for somebody and done something like weird on stage, and then you're just sitting there waiting all show for them to come back and say something to you?
Absolutely. I mean, I before all this, I toured with like Tammy Pescatelli and Adam Ferreira, and like once with Tammy, I had to go to the bathroom, but there was no bathroom in the green room of this theater, so you have to walk out through the audience to get to the bathroom. So I'm like, I can't do this, you know. And I'm like, I'm gonna piss my pants, like, if I don't go out there. So I find like the stage manager in the back, and I'm just like, "Hey man, I gotta go to the bathroom. I don't know. Can you let me out like the back ways, or can I just piss in the alley?" He's like, No, I'll walk you through. Of course, like opens the door from like the side of the stage, like it's the loudest door in the world. Walks me out, and she's talking to us from the stage. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm sorry. Like,
did everyone in the crowd recognize that it was you?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because the aisles are lit so people can get in and out a little bit, you know. And this like, "Just follow me," like real loud, you know. And so like the rest of the show, I'm like, okay, well, you know, it was fun getting to know her, and that will be it. And she was super cool about it. And like, I probably didn't even say anything, but in that moment, I was like, why couldn't I should have just pissed my pants. It would have been better to just piss my pants.
You always go outside and walk around to the front. Yeah. That's always what I do, because I have nightmares about exactly what just happened to you.
Oh, it was, and like my parents were in the audience, because like it was like one of the first like theaters I would ever do, and I was just like, oh my God, like I don't know if I could face them.
And in your mind, you're thinking, Tammy's like, why did I give this kid this kid? Come on, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh man, this is gonna look real bad. This is gonna look real bad for everybody. But you know, but like you said, like it's not. These people don't even remember it by the time they're done most of the time.
Exactly. And I don't think anybody in the crowd remembers it either.
No, definitely not. Like, and it's partly because like they are there to see the person that's on stage.
Sure. Yeah. If I were the headliner, it might be different. Or if I went like full Kramer, then they would remember that, right? But they're not going to remember just some guy that wasn't funny.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a. Did you find this at all? Like, especially when you haven't done theaters before, like I never, you don't do them, so you don't know how they work, right? Until you
Yeah.
do them. And the first few times I was doing the same thing where I was like racing through material
Yeah.
and like, oh my God, I still have 5 minutes left. Like I have nothing else to talk to. And part of it was because I didn't know I had to like let it
Yeah.
access the rest
Yes.
of the room.
Mhm.
Like you,
Yeah. I've done some like a handful of just like obnoxiously large rooms, and it wasn't me, so it's not a brag at all. I was just on
oh,
the show,
yeah,
and it was, yeah, it took me a while to just laughter travels and behaves differently in rooms like that, and also things get laughs that don't get laughs in a club for whatever reason. I haven't been able to figure out why. A pause, you can like hold a pause super long in a theater, and it plays really well. It's
yeah.
just little things like that you got to figure out, you know.
It's it's almost like in a club, they're on top of you, and you're so worried. Like if you pause too long, you're gonna lose them.
Right.
But in
Right.
a theater, like they're like appreciative. Like if you pick up the water and take a sip, like you might get an applause break. It's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're all sitting, they're all facing you. There's no table, there's no server, right? They're there to enjoy the show.
Yeah,
And I feel like sometimes maybe at a club, even though I think clubs are the best place to see comedy,
for sure.
sometimes you're fighting against all those other things going on. And now they're all going to be wearing masks in the crowd, so who knows?
Yeah, that's gonna be. I was just talking to somebody, and they were doing a club in like Oklahoma City or Tacoma or something like that, and they're like, "Yeah, it'll be 35% capacity, and everyone's gonna wear gloves and masks, and the tables will be all spread out." And I was like, "That doesn't really sound like a fun place, Like comedy clubs are fun, There's a little bit of
Sure.
energy in the air, and if
Well, maybe here's the optimistic side of me. Maybe the crowd, because the crowd will have to go through this strange experience together,
yeah.
the crowd will be kind of united in a way right from the get-go.
Yeah, and hopefully they will just be so appreciative to like do something,
Right.
like that they're gonna be excited to be there. Um,
Yeah, but that might last a little while, but we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see
that'll
in a
last
couple
like a
months, you
week.
know?
Yeah, until people start going back to work and they're like, I have to get up tomorrow. You're gonna make me
Yeah,
laugh or not?
for
Uh,
sure. For sure.
so all right, well then let me ask you this. Um, I know comics have vices certainly, but that after the bomb thing to cope, that after the bomb coping mechanism for me, it's usually like drive through food by myself or in a hotel and calling another comic. Like what is your go-to thing like after a bomb to sort of try to get
It's
over
a cigarette
it?
outside. And it got I quit smoking during quarantine. So we'll see if it lasts when I'm back out in the real world. But I haven't had a cigarette in like 2 months. But there was a while there, yeah, good or bad, I'd have to step outside and smoke a cigarette
Yeah,
after a set. And that I remember in particular that James Gregory show. I stepped outside, I smoked 3 or 4 cigarettes, just standing there. And I eat fast food so much, I can't even call that a vice. That's just part of my
it's a
diet.
routine.
But yeah, it's the chain smoking the cigarettes
Yeah,
outside, texting friends about it, like that whole, because you're still on edge after after a set, you still got that energy going. So
yeah.
you gotta, that's what just chain smoking.
Yeah, and you need something to just relieve and get you out of where you were, and release that tension. And it's so funny. Like, do you ever have this? Like, you'll talk to somebody that isn't a comic about the show, and you'll try to explain to them why it was bad, and like they're like, "But I don't get it. Like, what's wrong? It sounds like everyone had a good
Sure.
time. That's a big. It's
Yeah.
and it's only another comic that's going to be like, oh, that sounds horrible.
Right. I've given up trying to talk about comedy to my non-comedy friends,
Yeah,
because I'm just like, there's just so much that, and it's not like a douchey thing. It's just like this. Just there's no like, you have no basis for what I'm talking. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
right.
Like if they tried to talk to me about their job selling insurance, I wouldn't have a clue. They're like, "Oh, this meeting went bad." I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So for a while, yeah, I would try to tell those stories, and they're like, well, I'm sure it was fine. I'm like, no, you don't get it.
Right.
No, it was awful.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was really funny. Shut up.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's always the worst too. When you think you're gonna do really well, and even if you don't bomb, you don't do as well as you want, like that almost hurts more than just bombing,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
because you're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna get them. This is they're gonna carry me out of here when I'm done. And
Yeah, and then you gotta people like my friend Josh Wagner gave me great advice. He was like, just always take the compliment after the show,
yeah,
because there's no point. For so long, people would be like, good set. I'd be like, He's like, dude, no one cares. Just take the compliment. Don't fight them on it.
right. Yeah.
Hey, you're really funny. No, I missed the tag on the, you don't care.
And like
So,
the what? Like they don't even.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron, let me ask you. And it doesn't have to be necessarily in the early days. It can sometimes it's when you least expect it. Things are going great. You have great shows. You're having a great time, and all of a sudden, like the left hook comes out of nowhere and knocks you on your ass. Do you have any of those moments where like you're like, I think everything's going pretty well, and then you just get that one show where you slip up, you do something wrong, you misstep, and then you wake up on the mat,
Yeah, well, even more disheartening than that for me is when I just I just have a set and I'm like, oh, they never liked me. It would be so much better if I said one wrong thing and they all turned on me.
Right.
Then I could pinpoint it. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know what it is. My whole essence during the show is just they are not into it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I feel like they are, doing shows. They're going well. I'm on a little bit of a roll, and then all of a sudden, nobody likes you.
Right.
You're like, what am I doing? Do I have a different end? Do I need to get more sleep?
Right.
What do I need to dress differently? Like maybe try a new haircut? You know how many times I've been like, I think maybe my beard's getting too long, and that's hiding some of my facial. And I'm just like, no, nobody. I just had a bad set. But you're backstage, like, maybe I'll turn my hat backwards. I think maybe the light was, I'm going to try holding my mic in my left hand. That way it's,
Right.
I had that all the time. And now it's like a joke in my head. Whenever I have like 2 good shows in a row, I'm like, oh, okay, here comes the next one's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And if you prepare yourself for it that way, if you think every show is going to be terrible, then,
if it
you
is,
won't be too disappointed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What do you think the farthest you have driven for the least amount of either stage time, money, laughs, or all of the above?
Oh man. I mean, I've gone and done festivals where I don't make any money, but that at least has some other benefit,
Right.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
But I've driven up to I've done runs through Michigan and Wisconsin, 12, 13-hour drives.
Yeah.
For virtually no pay, doesn't cover gas.
No.
And I'm still doing those. I hope to get to do those again soon.
Isn't it crazy how much you miss even that?
Yeah. Dude, for sure. For sure. All of that. I didn't really appreciate it at the time. I went the last few months of 2019, I was driving so much and doing so many shows outside of town and just constantly on the road. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And I'm like, man, I didn't realize how much fun that was.
Right. And it's so easy to take it for granted. I was talking to another buddy, was like, man, I miss a continental breakfast at a Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah.
So bad. We're
gas station hot dog, dude. Hook me up.
Yeah, right. It's like, it's like, God, I just miss shitty oatmeal.
Sure.
Because when you're so used to that and it's gone, for the first couple weeks, was it like this for you? The first couple weeks, this is nice. It's like a vacation. This is, and then month 2.
Finally got some time to do some stuff around the house or whatever.
Yeah, right. I think I had a script or something I was going to work on. And then by month 3, you're like, I will literally tell jokes anywhere at this
Yeah, exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, every comic realized like 2 or 3 weeks in, they're like, "Oh, it wasn't that I didn't have the time; it's that I just didn't want to do that stuff."
Yeah, exactly.
But you can fall back on, I'm on the road. I'm not even home for more than 2 or 3 days at a time. I can't clean the bathroom or what. Now you're just sitting around. I got all the time in the world.
And
Still
there's
not doing
something
it.
like, I don't know, maybe you felt this way. For me, there was like this really, as much as the travel can suck sometimes, and you're like never in one place. There was something so cool of like getting my suitcase, getting a cab to the airport, jumping on a plane, and then like being like, all right, I got 3 days to repack. It felt like that's what you were trying to do. This whole time, like that's where you're going
Yeah,
for.
you're literally living a dream.
Yeah,
You know?
right. Oh, that's a better way to.
Like, you just have a moment. I've heard Bill Burr say on the podcast, I couldn't believe that I was actually doing it.
Yeah,
Those moments where you're like, dude, here I am. There's
right.
those moments where I'm just in a car by myself. I'm like, look at me. I'm driving through Florida right now to go do a stand-up comedy show because this is my job.
Yeah,
You know?
it's insane.
Yeah, kind of a cool thing. And now I don't have a job.
Right.
So
Yeah. It really does make you think like, all right, so it was cool to say I was a professional comedian for a long time, but now it's not so. When people ask what I'm doing, it's like it's a little disheartening to be like,
it's part of why you did comedy so that you could answer that question at like weddings and stuff.
it's funny. When I first started, I didn't tell anybody I was a comic. I was like afraid to tell people I was a comic. Like people would say, "What do you do?"
When you were like a comic, like for a living, or when you were just
I
starting
would
out?
say like 2 years in, it took me to like start answering that question honestly.
Yeah.
And because I would be like, I'm in like sales or I work, whatever my part-time job was. It was like, I work here. They're like, I heard you do comedy. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But then once you start doing it like either full-time or more regularly, when you do start answering that question, like I'm a comic, you feel pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool. It's so funny because I wanted to be able to. I felt like that was such a cool thing for somebody. Yeah, what do you do? Oh, I'm a comedian.
Right.
But now, if I say it, I'm so annoyed that there's a follow-up question, even though they're obviously, I wanted to have something interesting to say, and now I hate that it's something interesting if I want to avoid conversation, like an Uber driver or something.
Yes.
You'd be like, you going to the airport? Where are you flying? Oh, just for work. Oh, what do you do? Just this or that.
Little this.
Yeah, a little bit of. I'm in importing.
Oh, that is so brutal. That conversation is just like, and then they're like, "Oh, you're a funny guy." Oh,
Anything I've seen your stuff? Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get this, like, especially when I moved to New York, like the Uber drive thing. They'll be like, "What do you do?" and that kind of thing. And if I tell them, like, they'll name somebody hugely famous. They'll be like, "Do you know Jerry Seinfeld?" And it's like, do you think I would be in this Uber pool if I did? Like, do you think I'd be splitting this car with 3 other people if I did Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah, I'm his opener.
Yeah.
You know?
Doesn't really take care of the travel, but yeah, I'm about to go hang with him right now.
Yeah, that's when you realize how few comics people actually know.
Oh, it's so.
There's like 4 of them that people know who they are.
Yeah,
That's about it.
it really is. But before we get out of here, I want to ask you this. So, you've had those bad bombs and stuff. First of all, are there any, besides that one with James Gregory, are there any that you're still losing sleep over, or have you pretty much made your peace with all of them?
No, I'm pretty much now after that forced me to put every show into perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't go into shows with those high expectations anymore.
Yeah.
And just, the more time you do it, the less significant everything is.
Right. And then, so
yeah.
I think that's a really good headspace. So to follow up with that, what do you think it is, that you would tell it's cliche to say, but that you would tell your sort of younger self, like going into it, to like, hey, you're going to be all right? What is sort of that thing that you've picked up on or learned in sort of, was it after that James Gregory show that you learned that?
Yeah, I would go back and I would say this is one show. I know that this is the 10th show you've done, or the 12th. This is going to be one of thousands.
Yeah.
And a few years from now, you're not even going to remember most of this.
Right.
I think if someone were to come and tell me that, if someone were to come and tell me right before on stage, hey, you're about to bomb real bad opening for James Gregory, but nobody's going to care in like a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, okay, fine. And they're like, you'll do hundreds and thousands of more of these.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, great.
Because that's really what we're searching for in the beginning, is the promise to do it again.
Right.
And we think that the performance that we're about to give will judge whether we do it again or not.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, now, I keep a big spreadsheet on Google Docs of every time I do a show. I log the date, the time, where it is, how much time I'm doing, what the show is. And I just keep that. And now, now I scroll through it. It's a long list now, and I scroll through it, and that James Gregory show, the show where I bombed, is just one line on that long spreadsheet.
It's a really great way to put it. Aaron, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Yeah, man.
I do appreciate your time. Please tell people where to find you on TikTok and
TikTok, dude. Hit me up. At Real Aaron Weber on everything.
Okay.
Real Aaron Weber.
Right on. Right on. Well, thank you again for doing this.